That night, Harris sat frozen in his hotel room. The small room was dim, lit only by a sickly yellow lamp, the curtains half drawn. The wind slipped through the cracks, whistling, like distant whispers. On the table lay Michael's unfinished case file. But Harris couldn't focus. That sound again, the whisper, as if it came from somewhere far away, yet pressed right up against his ear, reminding him he was not alone. Harris rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off exhaustion. He muttered to himself, "I'm just stressed. That's all." Then, a sharp crack. The mirror split with a thin fracture. The sound echoed through the room. Harris spun around, but the reflection wasn't right. He saw himself, and behind him, a decrepit old house. Inside, a flickering red flame. His heartbeat pounded. Step by step, he approached the mirror. Michael's face appeared, pale, hollow, eyes black as voids. His lips moved, but no sound escaped. Harris reached out, almost touching the glass, when a knock rattled the door. Knock, knock, knock. He jumped, turned. The hallway was empty, only the wind howling at the far end. He shut the door slowly. When he looked back, Michael was gone. That night, Harris never slept. Instead, he dreamed. A barren field, sky pitch black, the ground covered in ash. At the center, a withered tree. From its trunk, pale skeletal hands clawed outward, grasping, pulling, reaching for him. And then, a voice, low, echoing. Inside his head, "You've opened the door. Now you cannot return." Harris jolted awake, drenched in sweat. But what froze his blood were the handprints burned into his arm, proof that the dream was no dream at all. The next day, Harris went to the city library. Digging through dusty archives, he stumbled on a century-old newspaper. The headline read, 1897, a wave of mysterious deaths in the same housing block. Locals claimed they saw a shadowy figure standing silently at the windows under the full moon. Police found nothing, but whispers spoke of an ancient curse upon the land. Harris's breath trembled. Michael's case was only the surface. This thing was no ordinary ghost. It had lingered for generations, spreading terror. Lost in thought, Harris froze, rustling behind him. He looked up. A figure in a long coat stood at the end of the aisle, back turned, silent. Harris called out, "Hey, who's there?" No reply. The figure walked away, slow, deliberate. Harris hurried after it, but at the end of the hall, nothing. Only an old book lying on the floor, its cover torn, rotting. Barely legible words remained, the binding ritual. Hands shaking, Harris picked it up. Inside, it described a right to imprison a malevolent entity, but scrawled in blood-red ink one warning. If the ritual fails, the soul of the caster will be devoured. Back at the hotel, Harris sat motionless. He knew he was too deep, but he also knew if he stopped now, the entity would keep killing, and Michael would not be the last. That night, as he copied notes from the book, the light flickered and died. Darkness, and then a whisper, right at his ear. "Harris, you can't escape." A freezing chill pierced through him. The lights blinked back on, and Harris found himself standing in the middle of the room, with no memory of leaving his chair. On the wall, scrawled in black charcoal, were the words, "On the next full moon, the ritual begins." The next morning, Harris was dragged into the interrogation room, a cramped, suffocating box, cold white neon humming overhead, casting its light on a scarred metal table. Harris sat there, hands cuffed, sweat beading on his forehead. He had already endured nearly 3 hours of relentless questioning. "You were the last person to see Michael alive. Why did he die in such a horrific way?" The police chief, a heavy-set man with a voice like gravel, leaned forward, glaring. "I've told you already." Harris slammed his cuffed hands on the table, eyes bloodshot. "There's something out there. It's not human. Michael didn't kill himself. I didn't kill him either. It took him." That night, the sky was heavy with black clouds, the pale moon hidden behind a thick veil. Inside the town's jail, Harris sat slumped against the cold wall, fingers locked together, eyes fixed on the damp concrete floor. He tried desperately to reason with himself. Michael died from a chain of tragic accidents. The strange events were coincidences. The feeling of being watched, just stress. But deep down, the truth was knocking, and it was knocking harder. Creak. The sound slithered through the dark. Harris froze, eyes darting. The iron door was still shut, the lock untouched. But the noise, it wasn't coming from there. Creak, creak, as if footsteps pressed down on rotting wooden boards just beyond the cell. Harris shot up, clutching the bars. His voice cracked into the silence. Who's there? No answer. Only the wind, whistling through cracks in the building, cold enough to gnaw the bone. Suddenly, the overhead bulb flickered. Once, twice, then went dead. The room drowned in black. Harris's pulse hammered. His hand reached instinctively for the holster at his side, only to remember his weapon had been confiscated. The helplessness was suffocating. And then, a whisper, right at his ear. Harris, did you really think you could escape? He gasped, spun around, but nothing. Nothing but void. From the corner, a shape began to form. A figure, eyes glowing red, face twisted, stretched by some unseen force. Harris's breath caught. It was Michael, but not the Michael he once knew. This was something else, something possessed. Michael, his voice cracked. This can't be real. The shadowed form drifted closer. Each step left a trail of black residue on the floor. You don't understand, Harris. I never really died. I was only a vessel. Cold sweat streamed down Harris's spine. He staggered back until his shoulders hit the wall. Michael's distorted face tilted. A grotesque smile tore across his lips. You think you're investigating a case? No, Harris, you're the one being investigated by me and by it. The lights snapped on. The apparition was gone. Harris stood trembling, chest heaving. Footsteps echoed. The cell door opened. A guard stepped inside. Officer Harris? You all right? I heard shouting. Harris wiped the sweat from his face, forcing his breath steady. I just need some air. The guard eyed him with suspicion, then left. The door slammed shut. Alone again, Harris dropped into the chair, head in his hands. He knew now this was no ordinary case. The entity had chosen him, and the real game was only beginning. The chief's laughter cut through the tension. An ancient entity? Demons? Harris, you're a cop, not a horror novelist. We need evidence, not ghost stories. Harris said nothing. How could he? No one would believe what he had seen. To them, he was just a madman making excuses. The chief finally signed the report. The scratch of the pen across paper, like the sound of a verdict being sealed. Take him to the jail. We'll continue the investigation. Cold steel closed around Harris's wrists. 2 officers escorted him down the corridor, the flickering bulbs overhead, each footstep echoing louder, heavier in the silence. Harris clenched his teeth. In his eyes, desperation and a flicker of grim resolve. He knew if they locked him away, the entity would not spare him. The iron door groaned shut behind him. And from that moment on, Harris was not just imprisoned in stone and steel. He was trapped in something far worse, a cage where the shadows had free rein to seep deeper and deeper into his mind. Inside the narrow cell, Harris sat hunched, his back pressed against the frozen stone wall. The air was thick with dampness, cold enough that each breath dragged ice into his chest. The muffled cries of other prisoners had long gone silent. Now the only sound left was the wind seeping through the barred door, howling like whispers of the damned. Harris knew his time was running out. Stillwater was no longer the same town. It had changed, twisted, and the creature wearing Michael's face was far from finished. A thought gnawed at him. Maybe I'll die here, and when I do, everyone else will be devoured too. But then, from the far end of the corridor, footsteps, slow, steady, each one echoing against the stone, as though the darkness itself was clearing the path. A torch flared on the wall. Its light revealed the face of an old man, hair white as ash, black priest's robe clinging to his frame, eyes deep cold, carrying the weight of decades of prayer. Not a guard, not a villager. Harris straightened in shock. You're Harris? The man's voice was rough, heavy, like it had been ground through years of silence and prayer. Who are you? Harris asked, wary. Before he could answer, a younger figure appeared behind him, no more than 20, a lantern in his hand, eyes burning with both resolve and grief. Father Anselm, the boy whispered. We shouldn't stay. It's coming. The priest nodded, gaze locked on Harris. We're here to get you out. If you die in this cell, that thing will grow too strong to ever stop. Harris frowned, suspicion and fear clashing. How do you know that? Who are you really? The priest raised a trembling hand, traced a cross over his chest. I survived the last sealing 30 years ago, and this is Elias, my disciple. His family was swallowed by the same monster. He leaned closer, voice heavy as stone. We have no choice, Harris. Together, or we all vanish. Before Harris could reply, a deafening crash split the silence. The iron door at the end of the hall buckled inward. From the fracture poured a flood of black smoke, writhing alive, and within it, souls. Trapped, screaming, forced to move like puppets. Move, Elias shouted, wrenching Harris to his feet. The lock on Harris's cell shattered as if crushed by invisible hands. The three bolted into the corridor. Behind them, the darkness roared, extinguishing every torch in its path. For one fleeting instant, Harris saw it. A twisted face blooming inside the smoke. Michael. But no longer human. A demon, wrapped in coils of red mist, floating above the ground. Michael surged forward from the void, and his voice echoed from every wall, every shadow, cold and merciless. You should never have known, Harris. Knowledge only hastens death. Tonight, you will be silenced. Father Anselm raised a silver crucifix, words of Latin spilling from his lips in a torrent. Light burst from the cross, holding the shadow at bay. Go, he barked. Elias dragged Harris through the prison yard toward the gate, but the world outside was already tearing apart. The watchtower bell tolled wildly, not by human hands. The entire town convulsed. Wooden houses twisted, beams stretching like sinew, roofs warped into grotesque shapes, the wail of children, the howl of dogs, blending into one endless cry. At the prison gates, Harris turned, voice breaking. Why? Why are you helping me? Father Anselm's reply was stripped to the bone. Not you, the world. And then, a massive hand of shadow punched through the prison walls, crushing stone like paper. Even sanctified steel could not stop it. Michael emerged fully, half his body a storm of writhing black smoke, his eyes pierced through them all. We'll meet again. His whisper slithered across Harris's skin, as though spoken right behind his ear. Run, Anselm bellowed, shoving Harris forward. The crucifix erupted in flames, an explosion of holy fire. It stalled the darkness, just for a breath. In that breath, Harris and Elias vanished into the night, while Father Anselm faced the demon alone. And here, Part Ba ends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss what comes next.